Hello, I'm Blue Glasses Girl. I define myself as a contemporary author who uses creativity to reduce ableism. So today I want to talk to you about the theme of connection and why and how it is important in shaping my art practice both before and during the pandemic lockdown. The first type of connection I'd like to talk to you about is neural connections. I became really interested in the human mind and how it works whilst training to be a child psychotherapist. During my training, I had to sit down and observe the development of an infant from birth through to toddlerhood. I got to reflect on what might be happening both in the infant's and the mother's mind. And this is when I became first curious about neural connections and what do they have to do with the way that we think. The human brain is made up of neurons that from birth begin to develop what are called neural pathways. Every time we learn something or try a new skill, a new pathway is created. Neural pathways are the way in which the neurons in the brain connect to each other. They communicate to each other by transmitting information that then shapes our memories and how we respond to stimuli and therefore how we behave. Doing this research helped me get curious and reflect on my own identity and how my brain works. Human neural pathways are as varied and distinct and diverse as our own fingerprints, meaning no other person will ever think exactly the same way you do. And that's neurodiversity in a nutshell. So why do I bring up neurodiversity? Because I want to share with you how being a neurodivergent person has shaped my art practice. Being neurodivergent means that my brain develops connections in a different way to the typical population, who are referred to as neurotypicals. I had known from childhood that something made me think and learn differently to my peers. I was often described as inattentive in class and a daydreamer. The truth was, I just couldn't process what was being said to me, as much of the information taught to me was taught verbally. Despite my challenges, I used to love making things, writing stories and performing, and I would excel in drama, craft and photography and English at school. An important turning point for me was when I asked to be tested whilst at university for dyslexia. My diagnosis found I was not able to put things in logical sequences. My auditory processing is slow compared to that of neurotypical peers. Discovering I was neurotypical for me was a rebirth, where I began to work with my ability to think dynamically and allow expression through my creative talents. As a child, to help me process information, I had to combine listening with sensory experience of mark making, and I still do this now. So having a pen and paper, doodling, writing down words or formulating plots for character stories, poems or drawing images as people speak to me all helps me build new connections. It helps my neural pathways. It's my mind's way of talking to itself about what's happening outside of me. So now I've explained how listening is a kinesthetic experience for me, but I should say about what happens also whilst I'm listening. So if, for example, you was to say to me, "Hello, my name is Emma and I live in the city of Leeds," I may only actually hear a name and I live in. My mind has a innate way of filling in the gaps, the lost words that auditorily I am not processing. My brain replaces the gaps by generating and recalling visual clues, images, symbols, memories, sensory experiences, sounds, which help me link together the words that I hear into a recognisable typical sequence like a sentence. Making and doing for me as I listen and talk is my way of documenting things for which words alone are not sufficient or that my mind isn't able to process. Sometimes I don't feel like expressing myself verbally at all because of how my mind thinks, and this is where my art practice has developed through my finding a way of connecting with those outside of me. My challenge as an artist has been trying to put words together in a way that other people, especially neurotypical people, will understand. Art allows my brain the creative freedom it needs to express to the world how my mind makes connections. You'll see this in my dominant art practice. as I enjoy working with various different mediums and materials, as my art tends to be a combination of spoken or written word, visual art, mixed media, textiles, photography, moving images and performance art. Before lockdown, I had an opportunity to combine all of the art mediums I enjoy working with into an exhibition called How to Be a Dyslexic Artist, which was created by the contemporary dyslexic artist Benedict Phillips. I was part of a photographic exhibition which I had made a physical representation of what being dyslexic is for me, in the form of a sculptural self-portrait combined with performance art. My piece was called Normal. Nothing outside of a really mediocre analog life.
It felt important to me that I used the time during lockdown to connect with neurodivergent artists to try and help me explore some questions that I had.
Which was, for both myself and other people, what it meant to be mentally healthy as an artist, and how being a disabled artist influences art practice, and how can creativity reduce ableism. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how my art practice has developed and changed during the lockdown. After reflecting on my experience of how to be a dyslexic artist, much of the process I found revolved around my experience of wearing tinted lenses, the glasses I'm wearing today for Erling syndrome, and my personal experience of my gaze and other people's experience of gazing. And it was a theme that I'd started working with around 4 years ago when I started taking photographs of things that captured my attention. I would post these images that I had collected over. I named the weekly post The Week Through My Eyes. It got a lot of views and became a core part of me managing my own mental health. The photographs acted for me as a sort of visual diary. The times when I felt too unwell to go out or speak to people and felt very disconnected from the world. A technique called reality checking, in which you check your own thought in line with reality. So when my brain told me that I couldn't go outside and it wasn't safe, or I couldn't connect with people, I would look back at the photographs I had taken, and these would connect me to the memories and occasions when I had been out and had made a connection, whether it was with a person or a connection with nature, a piece of art or a spiritual experience. Documenting my experiences in this way created visual bookmarks that I could use for that reality check-in that would prove to me that me and only me could have taken these images, and only I could have had these experiences. First major commission as Blue Glasses Girl was with Co-Creative Arts and Health. We were trying to find a new solution to the old question, how can we make people feel like art was for all, by reducing barriers. We were also curious about the link between being mentally healthy and art. Eventually we came up with a great concept to deliver creative coaching sessions for families. So we applied to the National Lottery to deliver those sessions within the city of Bradford, and we were successful in receiving the funding to deliver that project. As we were preparing the groundwork to launch the project and we were almost ready to launch it, when, out of the blue, it was announced by Boris Johnson, our then Prime Minister, that the country would be forced into a national lockdown due to the COVID pandemic. So we, like many artists, were forced to rethink all our plans. We both felt that it would be even more important to deliver what we'd set out to do, now given that people were going to be made to stay home, but we just had to find a practical way how to deliver the project. The obvious solution was to create an online project only. So I was commissioned to write a Creative 4 module online coaching programme.
It felt important to me that I used the time during lockdown to connect with neurodivergent artists to try and help me explore some questions that I had.
I'd like to talk to you now about how I made and sustained connections within the disabled artist community during the pandemic lockdown, and explore a bit about my own artistic response to living during a lockdown. I just want to point out that all the videos can be found on my YouTube link. Prior to the lockdown, I had been performing stand-up comedy. Doing stand-up gives me a way to express the questions that I have about life. I can ask questions on stage like, why does this happen? Why do people do that? Have you ever noticed? When? To see if my experience of the world are shared by others. Does my gaze match other people's? Do they see their world in a similar way to me? Their laugh is like an acknowledgement that there's a common truth in the stories I share. Comedy for me has been an opportunity to push societal boundaries, and it has given me opportunities to address the hardships of living with disabilities, poke fun at and mock societal norms from which ableism arises. The lockdown opened up so many opportunities that would not have been available to me outside of the lockdown situation. I was able to connect with disabled comedians across the globe with the use of video technologies like Zoom. It meant that gigs could be live streamed on every social media platform, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and hundreds more. I connected with organisers and comedians through platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. A comedian peer of mine started a weekly Zoom meetup for disabled acts only. This was used as a way to share information about upcoming gigs, chat about our experiences, and share the challenges of being a disabled artist. The group built up over the course of the lockdown and has over 30 members now. Members of the group have collaborated to set up new, regular online comedy nights, write and perform. You can see some examples on my YouTube, and create podcasts. It was really important that disabled comedians had a space where we could get together and actually begin to challenge the narrative around disabled people within comedy by providing opportunities for each other to have our comedy seen. Our collective presence felt like a form of activism in reducing ableism by challenging stereotypes, showing that disabled people come in all shapes, sizes, races and genders. For me personally, an important part of my performing was raising awareness of invisible disabilities. Performing alongside my peers with visible disability online was impacted by the fact that you can only see what you can see of me now from the chest up on a small screen, and that created an equal platform. This meant we could use our comedy material to present and represent our own disabilities, which presented a new challenge for viewers. But it gave disabled comedians control over the narrative, offering an alternative one to what had been happening, which is the neurotypical able-bodied led comedians with punching down jokes. I had been following on social media a couple of disabled artists prior to lockdown, one in London, another in Brighton, who specifically had set up nights for neurodivergent and disabled artists. So during lockdown I was able to perform and even MC a night. I'd also been following a black disabled artist in the US who specialised in running comedy nights for deaf and disabled and neurodivergent acts. During lockdown we were able to connect, and from discussions the first transcontinental podcast was launched. It airs monthly with a cast of 6 disabled creatives, and we discuss love, sex and relationships. I see comedy as a form of communication that creatively breaks down the social barriers and connects the disabled and non-disabled communities. Alongside my own performing arts, I'd continued the consultancy work with Love Arts that had started prior to the lockdown. This gained momentum during the lockdown as artists were keen to connect and support one another and collaborate. What used to be in-person regular meetings with a large network of artists and creatives from our city had started happening online, and we could take this time to really focus in on our own mental well-being as artists. I was able to facilitate small group discussions and write reports, offering up ideas and solutions to making spaces more accessible for all. This led to our team being commissioned to work with a local contemporary art gallery to provide a space for artists and employees to think about their own mental well-being. We were also able to provide support to a live arts festival in preparation for their relaunch in live art events again, following the lockdown. I used my skills as a writer and disabled artist to share research, findings and information about how we could make spaces and events even more accessible for disabled audiences. For my own art practice, my main interests continued to be expressing my personal narrative and how I connected spiritually, mentally and sensory with my world. Creating something with my own hands has always been important to me, as I can see immediately the results of what I'm doing. I've always had a pull towards handicrafts. Doing a project that involves a lot of repetition and using coloured fabric, paper and making to decorate my home was a blessing. Being isolated at home, it felt important that I could put my own creative expressions in my own space. Connecting with nature was really important experience for me, both mentally and spiritually. I'd like to show you a piece I created during lockdown, which is currently unnamed. It's a self-portrait of my experience of being in the pandemic. This is a piece of art that I created. It's currently unnamed. What I did is I foraged for wildflowers. I started thinking about how you could keep an element of nature, like a flower or plant that can easily wither and die and has a time limited span, how you could kind of preserve it, a bit like a time capsule, like I do in my writing. How do you preserve that moment in time, so I could look back on it after the lockdown. And obviously I was really connected with nature at that time, so I went out and foraged wildflowers from the local area during the permitted exercise phase, and I pressed them and dried them. I then pinned them to the canvas, and then this over the top here is you remember there was a shortage of toilet paper, so obviously I've still got a comedic element. I've used toilet paper, and I wanted to go back to the days of being a child using paper mache. So it's essentially paper mache, quite a slow process because the paper mache takes a while to dry, because obviously the toilet roll is a lot finer substance. So I would, after the flowers are dried, I then did one layer of paper mache and built it up until we had 10 layers. So it took, putting a layer on each day for 10 days. At first I wasn't going to draw an image, and then I decided to draw an image, and you'll see this is a self-portrait. I've made it kind of androgynous because it's important to me, it's genderless. The other thing is that you can see that it's covering the face. It was, you could obviously, given the pandemic, link it to being a mask, but in actual fact I was exempt from wearing a mask. For me, it was a common theme that went back to how to be a dyslexic artist, of covering various body parts. So during that exhibition I had my whole face covered and only a small slit for my eyes. So I was playing around with this idea of gaze and what can and cannot be seen. So in this I chose to again leave the eyes visible but the mouth covered. So that is kind of a theme in my artwork, about having the mouth covered and can the mouth be seen or not seen. So this is the piece that I did during lockdown. Writing was also another really important way for me to connect to people during the lockdown and also express myself. I was able to write blogs so I could share with other people my experiences of being disabled and being a carer during the lockdown period. I was able to take part in radio interviews, podcasts, and read my poetry live online. I was asked to be a guest speaker on International Women's Day. Towards the end of the lockdown, I was able to collaborate with a writing peer who was studying in comedy writing and was able to use my creative writing skills and newly learned digital art skills to contribute to the creation of a book called Tales of a Pandemic, which is currently available on Amazon. I was commissioned to create small drawings for the start of each chapter, and it was interesting to draw, for example, an image of a mask, a face mask, which as an object now has a big cultural relevance and would be recognised by most in society as a symbol associated with the current pandemic, an object that may not have been known much about before. The book contains over 30 writers' stories and poems and acts as a literal time capsule of people's narratives from the pandemic lockdown period. I also submitted a poem. I really enjoy working with words in a rhythmic way, so although it's a poem, it has a sort of feel of a ditty that shows my personal narrative of living through the pandemic. I hope you enjoy it. A Year Through My Eyes, a poem by Blue Glasses Girl. Panic buying toilet rolls, every shop low in stock. Scared in case they need to go. Number ones only please, I have no loo row. Best act fast, buy quick. Ordering online may be my only hope. Hours of trawling the internet trying to purchase hand soap. Coffee morning chats live on Facebook to lift the spirits of my peers with camaraderie, coffee and shared tears. Punctuated only by, hold on, I have a parcel, as Tracy, the driver, knocks at my door with a consignment of industrial bog roll. They do not have that at the convenience store. Escapism with friends playing fantasy role-play games on Discord. Buying crap from Amazon and takeaway Costa coffees I really can't afford. Speed dating via video link, chatting to random blokes. Dating at a distance, Darren wooing me with his dad jokes. Arguments within the neighbourhood app as to what is an eligible face covering, as the government raced to commission a vaccine to end the suffering. Sing-alongs with choir on the telly in my front room, around the world lip sync to alleviate the gloom. Art classes for the neighbours' kids over the garden fence, COVID restrictions that make no sense. Making funny videos to post on TikTok. Meeting men on Bumble who I know later I'll block. Eat in to eat out, Blackpool beach heaving, no social distancing, sex ban unless bubbling, tears to stop it spreading, no more than 15 at a wedding. Gyms closed, home workouts instead, homemade hair dyes, Venetian red. Boris's live announcement so we know what is restricted. Universal credit benefited, non-essential shops closed and outside exercise permitted. Church closed to public, Bible studies go online. Brenda is using her Chromebook for the first time. Vaccines rolled out, elderly ship first, shielding for the vulnerable, a measure to protect. Why does Brenda's audio not bloody connect? All that fuss to get a table inside. COVID nonsense. Having to wear this thing on my face is bad enough. If kids still played in the mud like we did, there wouldn't have been half these sicknesses now. Trust Margaret to want to go to the pub. She has always liked her drink. Pain in the arse she is, never shuts up, doesn't even stop to take a breath. She could talk a glass eye to sleep. At least when Julie comes along with me before the lockdown, I'd got a break from her incessant talk about those damn garden gnomes. At least when she phoned I could make an excuse and hang up. Now I'm trapped here, listening to her prattle on. Tony, Kath, Sue, Diane is her favourite. Who names their gnomes anyway? She's always been a collector, like my Bob, God rest his soul. He loved his vintage record collection. At least that was entertaining though. I cannot believe she has brought with her actual photos of the tea party she had for VE Day with her gnomes. Although she does have a good heart, that mask she's made is lovely, nice floral print. But making matching masks for gnomes is a step too far. I don't care if she says it's setting a good example for the neighbours. They're chuffing gnomes. Mind you, it wouldn't surprise me if Boris said they can pass it on next. If he did, I could persuade her to get rid of them. For good. Fat chance of that. At least the mask helps cover my expressions enough for me to hide my boredom. 13 weeks of lockdown, and I end up in a pub to listen to her bang on about gnomes. Hope that waitress keeps the supply of brandy coming. I need it. Christ, do I need it. I blame her for the strange ways on the fact she ate too many disco biscuits when we were teen. At least then her only obsession was Barry Gibb. I could get on board with that. He was knighted last year. Imagine having to wait till you're 71 and the rest of your band have died to finally be called a sir. Poor guy. Actually, come to think of it, it was him who was in the newspaper back in March when he was seen going into that pawn shop in Florida. Now Americans, they know how to have fun. Wouldn't mind living in that sunshine state. Bet that's not always pissing it down like here. Oh no, she's brought our photographs of her grandkids now. Where is that waitress?